This is the moment the most dangerous standoff in a generation came face to face with a choice that has no clean answer on either side. Iran has submitted a formal peace proposal to the United States. Not a hint. Not a back-channel whisper. A written document passed through Pakistani mediators to the White House, sitting on the table in the Situation Room right now as President Trump and his top national security team stare at it and try to figure out what to do. Here is what the proposal says. Iran will reopen the Strait of Hormuz. Iran will agree to end the war. In exchange, the United States must lift its naval blockade on Iranian ports and stand down its military operations. And the nuclear question, the single issue Trump has called the whole reason this war started, gets pushed to a later stage of negotiations that has no timeline and no guarantee of ever happening. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt confirmed this morning that President Trump met with his national security team in the Situation Room to review the Iranian proposal. She did not say what they decided. She did not say whether Trump would accept or reject it. She said only that the president's red lines with respect to Iran have been made very, very clear. 20% of the world's oil moves through the Strait of Hormuz. It has been effectively closed since Iran shut it down after the February 28th strikes. Oil is at $104 a barrel. Shipping insurance for Gulf transits is at a 40-year high. And the country that controls that waterway has just told America exactly what it will cost to get it open again, with the one thing America most wants deliberately left off the table. If you are watching this for the first time, hit subscribe and like this video right now. This is the most significant diplomatic development since this war began, and it is moving by the hour. Tell me in the comments, do you think Trump should take this deal, reject it outright, or use it as the opening of something bigger? I want to read every single perspective before we go any further. To understand why this proposal lands with the weight it does, you have to go back to February 28th and trace every step that brought both sides to this table. On February 28th, 2026, the United States and Israel launched a coordinated military campaign against Iran. The stated American objectives were sweeping and unapologetic. Destroy Iran's nuclear enrichment infrastructure permanently, degrade its ballistic missile capabilities beyond recovery, force Tehran into a negotiating position so weak that it would have no choice but to surrender its nuclear ambitions entirely. Trump described it in the clearest possible terms. He wanted Iran's unconditional surrender and set a series of deadlines, March 21st, then March 23rd, then April 7th, for Iran to comply. Those deadlines came and went. Iran did not surrender. It closed the Strait of Hormuz. It launched counterstrikes against Israeli targets, American military bases across the region, and allied Arab states. Its supreme leader, Ali Khamenei, was killed in the February strikes, and his son was appointed as successor. Its navy was destroyed. Its air force was destroyed. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said on camera this morning that Iran now has half the missiles, none of the factories, and no navy and no air force. All destroyed. And yet Iran is still standing, still holding the strait, still negotiating from a position that, against every expectation, includes the ability to say no. The Islamabad talks in April were the first serious attempt to move toward resolution. J.D. Vance, Steve Witkoff, and Jared Kushner flew to Pakistan on April 11th and spent 21 hours in negotiations with the Iranian delegation. They left without a deal. Trump canceled the second round of those talks on Saturday, claiming there was too much infighting and confusion within Tehran's leadership to make progress. Within 10 minutes of that cancellation, by Trump's own account to reporters, Iran submitted a new and better paper through the Pakistani channel. That paper is the proposal sitting in the Situation Room today. And what it offers is a deal that solves the immediate global economic crisis while leaving America's core strategic objective, Iran's nuclear program, completely unresolved. The architects of the February campaign gambled that military destruction of Iran's conventional capabilities would produce a diplomatic capitulation on the nuclear file. 2 months later, Iran has lost its military but kept its leverage. The strait is its remaining card, and it has just placed it on the table with very specific terms attached. I want to address what several of you have been raising consistently in comments, whether this proposal is a genuine peace overture or a trap designed to drain American leverage. That question is at the heart of everything happening in Washington right now, and I want to give it the full analysis it deserves. The Iranian proposal, passed to Washington via Pakistani mediators and first reported by Axios, citing a U.S. official and two sources with direct knowledge, has a structure that is both simple and deeply consequential. Phase 1, Iran reopens the Strait of Hormuz. The U.S. ends its naval blockade of Iranian ports. The war formally ends. These things happen together simultaneously as a package. Phase 2, nuclear negotiations begin at a later stage with no specified timeline, no framework agreed in advance, and no conditions preset by either side. That is it. That is the entire proposal. Reopen the strait, end the blockade, stop the war, and then at some undefined point in the future, talk about the thing America said this entire war was fought to resolve. Pause. The White House confirmed this morning through Caroline Leavitt that Trump personally reviewed the proposal in the Situation Room with his full national security team. When reporters pushed her on whether Trump would accept it, she gave the kind of answer that is designed to say nothing while appearing to say something. She confirmed the meeting happened. She referenced the president's red lines. She said the U.S. will not negotiate through the press. 3 sentences that together mean we have not decided yet. While the Situation Room meeting was happening, Secretary of State Marco Rubio was giving an interview to Fox News that suggested the administration was nowhere near accepting the proposal as written. Rubio said the largest impediment to any agreement is Iran's fractured leadership. He described Iran as a system run by radical Shia clerics and dismissed the distinction between moderates and hardliners by saying they are all hardliners, just hardliners with different priorities. He said American negotiators are not just negotiating with the Iranians. Those Iranians then have to negotiate with other Iranians to determine what they can agree to. While Rubio was explaining why the proposal was likely unworkable, Iran's parliamentary speaker Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf was also making a statement from Tehran confirming that Iran still holds key energy and shipping cards in its standoff with the United States. That statement, delivered publicly while the Situation Room meeting was in progress, was a deliberate signal. We know you are reviewing our proposal. We know you are weighing our leverage. Here is a reminder of what that leverage is while you do the math. And most critically, while all of this was happening simultaneously in Washington, Tehran, and St. Petersburg, where Araghchi was meeting Putin, more than 80 countries issued a joint statement led by Bahrain at the United Nations Security Council, formally condemning Iran's actions in the region and calling out disruptions to international shipping that are driving up costs and sending shockwaves through global energy markets. 80 countries. That is not a fringe position. That is most of the world formally on record saying that what Iran is doing with the Strait is unacceptable, and that reality sits alongside the other reality, which is that America is reviewing a proposal to lift its blockade without securing a nuclear commitment first. The gap between those two realities is where the entire crisis lives right now. Sources, Axios confirmed by U.S. official and 2 sources with direct knowledge, White House press briefing via Caroline Leavitt, Fox News Rubio interview with Trey Yingst, Iran International live coverage, CNBC National Security Desk, Bahrain UN Security Council statement, NPR diplomatic correspondent. According to 3 U.S. officials cited by CNBC and Axios, the Situation Room meeting this morning was not a routine review. It was a session convened specifically because the stalemate in negotiations has reached a point where the administration needs to decide, in concrete terms, not in talking points, what it is actually willing to accept. We have learned from a source familiar with the internal dynamics of the national security team that the proposal has split the room in a way that mirrors the broader foreign policy tension that has existed inside this administration since the war began. There is one faction that reads the Iranian proposal as a genuine off-ramp, a way to reopen the strait, reduce oil prices, relieve economic pressure on American consumers, and claim a version of victory before the 2026 midterm elections, with the argument that the military campaign achieved its conventional military objectives. Iran has no navy. It has no air force. The nuclear question can be addressed through diplomacy from a position of strength once the immediate crisis is resolved. There is another faction that reads the same proposal as a trap. Their argument is precise, and it is the argument Rubio was making publicly on Fox this morning. If America lifts the blockade and ends the war without a nuclear commitment, Iran walks away from this conflict with its enrichment program intact, its new supreme leader in place, its status as a country that survived American military assault elevated globally, and zero binding obligation to ever address the nuclear file. The leverage that produced the proposal, the blockade, the military pressure, the economic strangulation, disappears the moment the deal is signed. And once it disappears, it cannot be recreated without starting the entire conflict over again. That internal split is not abstract. It directly determines whether America can present a coherent counterproposal to Iran within any time frame that keeps the Pakistani mediation channel functional. Pakistani Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif held a 50-minute phone call with Iranian President Pezeshkian this morning, a call that, according to sources familiar with its content, involved a direct warning from Sharif that Tehran's ongoing ceasefire violations are putting the mediation framework itself at risk. The channel that delivered the proposal is now being strained by the conduct of the party whose proposal it delivered. There is also a dimension to this that the public statements have not addressed. Iran's internet blackout has now entered its 59th consecutive day, 1392 hours of near total disconnection from the outside world, according to internet monitor NetBlocks, a country whose civilian population has been cut off from global internet for 59 days, whose cities have been struck, whose military has been destroyed, and whose economy was already broken before the first bomb fell, is now the country submitting a peace proposal and waiting for America to respond. The human dimension of that reality, the 80 million people inside Iran who are living through this without access to the outside world, sits beneath every diplomatic calculation being made in the Situation Room today. Why is the nuclear question the one thing Iran will not put in phase one? Follow the strategic logic because it is not accidental and it is not negotiating posture. It is structural. Iran's leadership understands something about American domestic politics that its negotiating position reflects with precision. Trump has staked the entire justification for this war on the nuclear objective. He told reporters on Saturday night, standing outside the White House Correspondents' Dinner, that everything will be peanuts compared to the nuclear issue if Iran ever gets a nuclear weapon. That statement was not political rhetoric. It was a negotiating constraint that Iran has weaponized. Because if the nuclear issue is everything, then a deal that does not resolve it gives Trump nothing to show his domestic audience except stopped fighting, lower oil prices, and an Iran that survived. By keeping nuclear out of phase one, Iran is forcing a specific choice onto the American side. Accept a deal that ends the immediate crisis and declare it a win while privately knowing the core objective was deferred. Or reject the deal and continue a war that costs American consumers at the pump every single day while oil stays above $100. That is not a coincidence of negotiating positions. That is a precisely engineered dilemma. This shifts the strategic calculus in a way that is visible and measurable. The pressure of $104 oil does not fall equally on both sides. Iran, with no functioning economy, no internet, no navy, and no air force, is not feeling oil prices the way American consumers and Republican senators facing 2026 midterms are feeling them. Rubio acknowledged this directly this morning when he said Iran is serious about getting out of the mess it is in, but then listed everything Iran has lost, half its missiles, all its military hardware, and framed it as American leverage. The question neither he nor anyone at the podium answered is this. If Iran has lost everything Rubio listed and is still refusing to put the nuclear file in phase one, what does that tell you about how much the nuclear file actually matters to Tehran's survival calculus? It tells you it is the one thing they will not trade away regardless of the cost. And a country that will not trade away its nuclear program regardless of the cost is not a country that will trade it away under diplomatic pressure after the blockade is lifted and the war is over. The legal architecture compounds the problem. Iran has now been elected as a vice president of the ongoing NPT review conference in New York, the international body overseeing the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, despite the fact that the IAEA declared Iran in breach of its non-proliferation obligations last year. That appointment, whatever its procedural explanation, is a signal to every government watching this crisis that the international institutional framework for isolating Iran on the nuclear question is not functioning as an effective pressure mechanism. Iran is simultaneously in violation of its nuclear obligations and presiding over the conference designed to enforce them. Here is the fork in the road, and both paths have serious costs. If Trump accepts the Iranian proposal as structured, the strait reopens within days. Oil drops, gas prices fall before the 2026 midterms. The economic pressure that has been building since February lifts for American consumers. The global shipping crisis that has paralyzed maritime trade and driven up costs in 80 countries begins to resolve. Those are real, tangible, immediate benefits that arrive quickly and visibly. But if Trump accepts it, every dollar of military leverage built over 2 months of airstrikes and naval blockade converts into nothing binding on the nuclear file. Iran's new supreme leader, Khamenei's son, takes power over a country that survived American military assault and emerges with its enrichment program intact. The IRGC, which Rubio described this morning as ideologically motivated hardliners unconcerned with economic reality, will have validated their strategic position entirely. And the argument that maximum pressure produces genuine concessions, the argument the entire campaign was built on, will have been tested and found to produce everything except the concession that was declared non-negotiable from day one. While Washington was debating whether to engage with the proposal, Iran's internet blackout hit 59 days and continued without interruption. Iran's parliamentary speaker was publicly reminding the world that Tehran still holds its energy and shipping cards. And Putin in St. Petersburg was telling Araghchi that not only Russia, but the entire world is admiring Iran's resilience. If Trump rejects the proposal, the strait stays closed. Oil stays above $100. The Republican senators who represent manufacturing and agricultural states keep receiving the calls from constituents asking why fuel is this expensive. The Pakistani mediation channel, already strained by the Saturday cancellation, comes under additional pressure to produce something or admit it cannot. And Iran, which submitted this proposal while simultaneously visiting Moscow and collecting Putin's pledges of full support, uses the rejection to continue building the international narrative that America was offered peace and chose continued conflict. There is no version of this situation that resolves cleanly. There is only a question of which set of costs America is more willing to absorb. The administration has 3 to 5 days, according to U.S. officials cited this weekend, before Trump reassesses whether to resume active military operations. That window is the decision point. What fills it or fails to fill it defines the next chapter entirely. Reports from two journalists with State Department access describe a diplomatic corps that is simultaneously managing the Pakistani channel, the Omani channel, and indirect contacts through Egyptian and Qatari intermediaries, 4 parallel communication streams, none of them fully coordinated, all of them carrying different versions of the same conversation. The institutional complexity of managing 4 mediation channels while a Situation Room meeting is happening and a Secretary of State is giving contradictory signals on live television is the operational picture behind the diplomatic language. The proposal is on the table. The Situation Room meeting happened. Caroline Leavitt confirmed it and said nothing. Marco Rubio said the Iranian leadership is fractured and implied the proposal falls short. Trump has not spoken directly about the contents since telling reporters on Saturday that a better paper arrived within 10 minutes of his canceling the Islamabad trip. What exists right now is a space, narrow, time-pressured, complicated by 4 simultaneous mediation channels and an internal American split and an Iranian negotiating team that Rubio described as having to negotiate with other Iranians before it can agree to anything, between where the two sides are and where a deal could theoretically be. Iran has offered the one thing it has left, the strait, the waterway, the 20% of the world's oil supply that moves through 33 kilometers of water that Iran has been controlling since February. It has offered to hand that back. And it has attached exactly one condition to that offer, that America ends the pressure campaign that is the only leverage it currently holds over the nuclear file. You can want Iran's nuclear program dismantled. You can declare that the whole point of the war, you can say everything will be peanuts compared to that. And you can also be the president whose constituents are paying $104 oil, whose Republican base is watching gas prices and midterm polls move in the same uncomfortable direction, and whose negotiating team just spent 21 hours in Islamabad and came home without a deal. Those two realities are both true at the same time. The decision that has to be made in the next 72 hours is which reality gets to determine the outcome. Watch the White House for any formal response to the Iranian proposal before the end of Tuesday. Watch whether Rubio's public skepticism hardens into an official rejection or softens into a call for further engagement. Watch whether Pakistan's mediation channel holds after Sharif's call this morning warning Iran about ceasefire violations, because if that channel fractures, there is no clear alternative mechanism for the two sides to communicate. Watch oil prices overnight and watch the strait itself, because Iran has demonstrated throughout this crisis that it communicates through positioning and movement as clearly as it communicates through foreign ministers and written proposals. The proposal is there. The clock is running. The decision that gets made in the next few days will either open the strait and defer the hardest question or keep it closed and dare the next escalation to happen. Both outcomes carry consequences that reach far beyond the Gulf. If this gave you real depth on a story that the headlines are only skimming the surface of, like this video and subscribe right now. I will be here the moment the White House delivers a formal response or the situation shifts in any direction. Share this with someone who is trying to understand what is actually at stake in this decision. And leave a comment. If you were advising Trump today, would you take this deal, reject it, or counter-propose? I read every single one. Stay safe. Watch closely.